All right, and we are live. Welcome back. Following an amazing night of fights that really didn't look like it was going to be all that good. UFC Fight Night Perez versus Nicolau. Um, Really surprising amount of really good knockouts and KOs. Not a lot of mismatches. A lot of competitive fights that were going back and forth. And for the event that had to, live in the shadow of UFC 300, didn't do too bad a job for how lame it looked on paper. Our main event at the top, Matheus Nicolau versus Alex Perez, originally supposed to be Matheus Nicolau versus Manel Cap. I believe this is his 9th time pulling out of a fight via injury in the past 5 years. I saw some stat like that. Continuing to dodge fights that he thinks would be difficult and giving them to more capable fighters. And the more capable fighter was Alex Perez. He showed up on 3 weeks' notice. And in round 2, what did he do, Clark?
He just cleaned that guy's clock. There was a lot of speed going on in this fight. These are two exceptionally fast fighters, I would say. And honestly, that knockout was just lightning fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So before these fights, I sent you some of the free fights that the UFC put out, and specifically, they put out 2 fights very recently where Matt Schnell gets knocked out at flyweight. I sent you the Matheus Nicolau fight, and I feel like the big takeaway from Nicolau's game in general is that he is going to stay on the outside. He wants you to make a mistake, and he wants to catch you with a catastrophic counter punch. He got close a couple times in this fight, but I feel like the difference between even like Emmanuel Kopp and an Alex Perez is that Perez has a sort of relentlessness that isn't necessarily well thought out footwork, though he was cutting off the cage really well. He just refuses to get off of you. And that is really difficult for a counter puncher, because a counter puncher wants to poke you in ways that make you uncomfortable so that you come at him and make a mistake. Nicolau was not getting those chances to reset. He was not safe in the areas that he thought he would be safe normally, and Perez really put it on him. Now, Nicolau was number 5. Perez is number 8. And Manuel Kopp, I believe, was also number 6. So even on, 3 weeks notice, late replacement, this really wasn't that unfair to Nicolau. These two guys were going to have to fight eventually anyways. And Perez's corner, if you guys can find in between rounds 1 and 2, the corner work of Alex Perez's corner, they knew it. His coach knew that fight was already over, and just gave him the few pieces of the puzzle he needed to catch him. And he did. Yeah. And as we're going to see with a few of these fights, last night we had a nice knockout. Folded him right up against the cage, caught him while he was trying to get away. You'll love to see it. What does this mean for flyweight? Do any of you really care? This is 125 pounds. We're going to have the title fight next weekend. The division is, really starting to heal and bloom in this post. We're well past the post Mighty Mouse era. We've seen crazy scraps between Dickinson, Figueiredo, and Moreno over 2 or 3 years. The turmoil is over. The weird mass extinction event at the top of the division is over, and we're starting to see some more killers get to the top. And it's actually kind of exciting. I am enjoying flyweight. I was talking smack before, but I am enjoying it. Our co-main event was Superman Span versus Bogdan Guskov.
Our Uzbekistani boy.
That's right. The Uzbekistani hope. I don't know how many of you have looked this up yet, but he is identical almost to another light heavyweight who's knocked out Brian Spann. If you want to go look that up, it shouldn't be that hard to find it. If you look up Bogdan Guskov in the top 10 image results on Google, you'll see exactly what I mean. Just a lookalike. It's kind of funny to be able to watch 2 different guys knock out Brian Spann, and you couldn't necessarily tell which is which just from the clip. But anyways, Bogdan has heavy hands. This guy is landing with some serious power. He got out of really dangerous positions too, and he showed composure when in dangerous situations, which is so rare at light heavyweight. I can't stress this enough. So many guys, if they end up on their back with their opponent punching them at light heavyweight, the fight's over. You can flip the channel. It's done. Bogdan was taken down by like a full-on football tackle from Brian Spann. Ended up on his back, was taking grounded pound from the top, and was not finished. That doesn't happen at light heavyweight. So I am actually quite excited about our Uzbekistani boy.
Yeah, he's definitely made a fan out of me last night for sure. You could really tell that Spann's team had planned for the ground game to kind of defeat those powerful strikes. And in round one, I mean, Gustav was controlled pretty well, I would say. But in round two, I think Spann got hit like a few really significant strikes. He goes for a takedown, doesn't really complete it, and then they're just standing up until the excellent knockout at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Stan had the grounded pound in round one. Guskov ended it with the grounded pound in round two. Some real heavy shots. I don't know. I'll be watching this guy. He lost to Uzdemir in his debut. Then I believe he picked up another knockout in his last fight. So he's on a 2 KO streak right now. At light heavyweight, doesn't take too much to get you into the title picture, so keep an eye on our friend Guskov. Another fight on this card that was very fun was De Silva versus Silva. Very high-level grappling on display here. Something that I really liked, and I know it'll be a little bit hard to keep these two girls separate in your head, being De Silva versus Silva. Silva took the victory, De Silva lost. De Silva, I would say, had the much crisper and sharper hands, but Silva used teep kicks and front kicks in general as an excellent weapon to keep her opponent at range until she could get to the grappling sequences. And once she had her hands on De Silva, she was very clearly the stronger girl. She was able to take those positions wherever she wanted them, and this really dominant grappling performance, along with these really well-placed defensive techniques, right? Using attacks as defensive techniques. She's not landing most of these teep kicks that she's throwing, but she's kind of clearing the space in between him, forcing her opponent to back up and keeping the hands off of her until she could get her arms around her opponent. I thought it was a really impressive performance.
Yeah, this was really a good fight. I think that Silva, I'm going to call her Karine. Karine has definitely proven, I think, that she is a serious threat in her weight division. She's got 4 wins now. And that's nothing. It's no longer a fluke at that point, right? She's fighting well. She's looking pretty good. She's got a great grapple game. And I'm excited to see more of her.
And, we love to see prospects in WMMA who are doing interesting things, who aren't just kind of yelling when they punch to get an early stoppage. Rolling down the card here, Silva did not get a performance bonus because the people handing those out really don't understand anything beyond a knockout. But I honestly think she probably should have got that over Denise. I don't really need a goofy heavyweight knockout every week. I actually don't. I know this might be news to some people. But I honestly, I would switch that up. I'd give that perf bonus to Karine Silva.
Yeah. I could see that for sure.
Going down our main card, we had Austin Lane versus Hanada Denise. 2 big heavyweights going at it. It's kind of sad, actually. I saw some people talking about this online earlier, asking the question, why are all these ex-NFLers getting shipped to the UFC with built-in brain damage? Why do they have no chins? I think these are guys who probably got tackled a little bit too hard on the line, and then they're coming into Dana White's Contender Series as an option B for a career. Austin Lane looks like he should be able to eat Denise for breakfast. Doesn't look like this should be a competitive matchup if you put these two guys next to each other, but it is heavyweight, so you can never really judge what's going on by looks or even by previous performances. Now Denise is supposed to be a big time kickboxer. They're comparing him. Oh my God. They're comparing him to all the other kickboxers who have crossed over and had huge success recently in the UFC. I don't know that I saw that, but he does look game. He does look like he can take a punch, and he can definitely throw one. That is our 3rd fight by KO for those keeping track. If you missed this card, I'm sorry. I know it looked kind of lame on paper. Turned out to have some pretty good ones on it.
Yeah, those are the ones you gotta tune in for, because those are where the sleeper good knockouts happen when no one's expecting it.
Well, and the other thing too, and this is something that I've done forever. If you go to the early Fight Pass prelims, if you see people who you don't know who they are, they didn't show up on Dana White's Contender Series, those are probably real prospects. Watch them. See if someone is doing something different. See if guys have looks that you haven't seen before. Because they're probably not going to get their shine starting out. So, whatever. Like Austin Lane, he's one of these Dana White Contender Series guys. I think Denise is too, right?
I think Denise is as well.
Yeah. They're being thrown as the third last fight on the main card. Denise is getting a little bit of shine because he does have that kickboxing resume, but yeah, I don't know. I keep an eye on him. It is heavyweight, so who really knows what's going on? We have another heavyweight fight that was a little bit messy on this card earlier in the card. So moving down, JSP versus David Onama. Trying to copy GSP with your walkout fight name. Those are big boots to fill, and JSP did not fill them.
Yeah, I feel like that was a bit of a... Yeah, could not quite reach that level tonight, or yesterday, I mean.
Yeah. So a few things to note. GSP was real mad. He was real mad because Onama missed weight. And if your opponent misses weight, you're in a bad spot. You're in a bad spot because you don't necessarily know what's going on. Did your opponent have a really bad weight cut and he is now compromised? Or did he not really try to make weight to get an advantage over you? You don't really know in those sorts of situations. And especially in like a combative sport, you're going to assume the worst. So JSP was really mad about that. Fair enough. Onama, if he did have any advantages from the weight cut, from not making weight, it was probably cardio, because JSP's whole game plan was to wear out Onama with the wrestling, to never get off of him. And then his gas tank emptied faster. So I want to at least give that sort of allowance. Maybe it was because he didn't really try to cut weight, and so he just had better cardio for this fight. Or maybe he just has better cardio and he had a bad weight cut. Either way, Onama looked leagues better than JSP. He's faster, he's more durable, and his cardio was better. So not too much else to say there. Uros Medic versus Tim Means. This is a fight that I liked a lot, actually.
Yeah, I like the uppercut part of the fight.
Yeah, I mean, very dynamic ending. Tim Means is like 1,000 years old. If anyone on this card looks like I could beat them up without a shirt on, it's probably Tim Means. He is a crafty old veteran, but old and veteran are the words to remember in that sentence. The man had a knockout in his fight previous, but Tim Means is not getting anywhere near the belt anytime soon. I also don't think Medic is getting anywhere near the belt anytime soon. And in his post-fight interview, he called out the guy who choked him out in his previous fight. You should go look up that fight, because Medic was talking like he got lucky. I don't think he got lucky. Now, all that aside, killer uppercut knockout. Tim Means is usually there to be hit, though. And as long as you got the power, you're going to put him away. Props to Medic, though. Moving down the card, Victor Henry versus Rani Yahya. I feel so bad for Yahya. He was like a submission ace back in the day, but he's another one of these Brazilian dudes who is... He's 39 years old right now, so he's about to turn 40. He's getting knocked out, and I don't know how many of you look into, let's say, Brazilian job prospects, but I don't think they have a thriving economy right now. So Yaya's probably going to go get knocked out again in about 6 months.
We're making geopolitical claims now, huh?
Well,
You don't know. I mean, like, honestly, this fight, yeah, it kind of was like watching your dad get beat up a little bit. Like the other dad actually was bigger than your dad, and your dad just gets beat up for a few minutes. Interesting stop, though. What do you think about that stoppage? Some people were upset about that.
Yeah, I don't really get... people worried about early stoppages 90% of the time are just not watching the same thing, I feel, or they're not watching enough fights. Do you need 17 unanswered elbows to end a fight? I tend to think no. But was this stoppage good? Yeah, I'd say so. How many unanswered strikes is a good standard?
Yeah, and if you go back to that Guskov fight, wasn't it about 12 before Herb Dean finally stepped in?
Before old Herb woke up.
Old Herb was like, 12, that's one too many.
That's right.
This fight's over.
I mean, if you're getting pieced up against the cage, I mean, think about Adesanya getting KO'd up against the cage. You can be out on your feet, and sometimes we see really scary knockouts, and I'm not going to shy away from a brutal KO. It's why I watch the sport. But every once in a while, you see something like Barboza versus Shane Burgos, where you think, I'm actually kind of worried that guy's brain is okay. And when referees can step in and stop a little bit of that process, I'm all for it, because I'd rather have these guys continue fighting and continue putting on entertaining performances than suffer a brain bleed in the cage, right? So there's my hot
I do
take on
wonder. I wonder what kind of guidance the referees are actually given. I wonder if they shouldn't just standardize some sort of thing and publish it, because I mean, you can see like the difference between this fight, the stoppage here, versus in the Guskov fight, we were talking about 12 unanswered strikes. I mean, that's like clearly a pretty big difference in refereeing right there. Is that even fair, I guess, to the fighters? It's like, oh, well, which ref do I get is deciding how early this fight's going to stop.
Well, okay, well, Dominic Cruz is going to be in our chat, okay? He's in the comments already.
I know. He was like, yeah, that's good. They got to have a chance, right? He was saying they got to have a chance to come back. But I don't know. After punch 11, are you going to come back? Is there a serious chance that you're coming back?
I mean, honestly, you might be surprised by how many times dudes get woken up by a punch. Is that the right way to be running fights? Hard to say, really. You're never going to get a standardized approach. Something like that just isn't going to happen. The commissions love to fight for power with the promoters, and the less they actually have to tell the promoter, the less they actually have to tell the public, the better, because then they can kind of just change things last minute and power trip whenever they want. So I don't think you're going to see some sort of standardized regulations come out for the referees. And really, they're just going to eyeball it until they make a mistake. It's what always happens. Mario Yamasaki, right, giving that one chick a chance to be a warrior all those years ago and never reffing again. Really, referees are able to do what they want until they do something so egregious we can't look away. So don't expect any changes on that front. So, sorry, Honey Yaya, I didn't mean to make your fight like a big PSA about brain damage and if the refs are doing enough. But that's kind of what it looked like out there. You should probably look at just opening a gym or coaching. I'm very sorry. Victor Henry, nice. I don't want to take too much away from your victory, Victor, but you beat the brakes off of a 39-year-old, and you've been given a lot of let's say pretty easy fights in the UFC. I'd love to see you up against some real competition, going forward. Fight before this, Austin Hubbard versus Figlak. Hubbard got the win. My only note I wrote for this fight is Hubbard kind of sucks. And the fact that Figlak wasn't able... the fact that Figlak wasn't able to do anything with this fight, I mean... Yeah, not very impressive.
I think they were very evenly matched. I think they were very similar type of fighters, and so it kind of it was pretty solid, I guess. Like there was back and forth, but it was just kind of, I don't know.
If you don't have a technique that can really cause your opponent to react, if you don't have something that can really cause him problems, and you're walking out for round 3 and you're still doing the exact same thing you did in rounds 1 and 2, I don't know what we can do for you, man. But whatever, great. Enjoy the win bonus. Enjoy the win bonus, Hubbard.
Yeah.
It's always so frustrating to me to watch fighters go out and not make adjustments. Their corners don't give them any sort of advice, and I'm supposed to be watching the most impressive fighters in the world. I'm calling the bluff. I don't think so. Kind of disappointing. Figlak looked like he thought he won the fight too, as they were announcing the winner, but I didn't feel too strongly either way. Going down the card to our other heavyweight fight that was messy and made it to the judges' scorecards. Dontel Mays versus Machado. I actually thought Machado won this one. I thought he took rounds 1 and 3. Mays hurt Machado, I believe, at the end of round 1 and had most of round 2 just kind of relying on his power as a deterrent. But when Machado felt confident, he was letting some pretty serious combinations go. And crisp, sharp hands at heavyweight, that's something you like to see. Now, he wasn't able to get in there and finish Mays because I think he did get a little bit overzealous, especially in round 1. That's when he got hurt, was when he was pursuing him. So the judges gave it to Mays. Our number one criteria for who wins the fight is supposed to be damage. I figured Machado did a little bit more. Judges saw it the other way. I'm really not that upset.
Yeah. I honestly thought at the very least round 3 definitely would have gone to Machado. I guess, the judges didn't think so. But Mays he didn't seem like he did very much in round 3. So I was kind of shocked that they gave it to him. He was clearly gassed to being, heavyweight. So that was kind of surprising. But for me, I think Mays would have won either way. But I would have given him 2 rounds instead of 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, again, 2 big heavyweights. It seemed like early on they were ready to go. They were ready to unleash. They felt a little bit of each other's power, and that settled everybody down. Going on to our next prelim fight, Marnik Mann versus Ketlin Souza. My number one note for this one is, ironically, Souza manhandled Mann.
We were talking a little bit during this fight, and I said that Mann kind of reminds me of like an MMO tank or something. She's taken a whole bunch of damage. She's very good at taking damage. She's good endurance. I mean, she was there for the whole fight, and she didn't do anything, and she lost. Right? That's what her other fight was as well. She had one other fight in the UFC, and it was the same thing. Went the distance, and she lost all 3 rounds very clearly. So I mean, she should probably go into like marathon running or something. She's got the endurance for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
the other interesting thing too, was I think Souza lost her last fight to Silva, who was on the main card, but she lost by submission in the first round. And I think Souza had been working on that ground game a little bit, so that was nice to see. A nice little turnaround for her.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say as well, there are some moments in this fight where Souza is loading up and just uncorking. It almost looks like sucker punches. The way Mann reacts, it almost seems like she's getting sucker punched. Like she doesn't see the punches coming from directly in front of her. So I'm with you. This might not be her preferred profession. Quick shout out to Dominic Cruz, because during this fight, a couple of the commentators were going over how Mann struggles with imposter syndrome. Dominic Cruz, one of our 3 commentators, did not know what imposter syndrome was, asked what it was, and immediately explained that, nah, that's fake, after being explained what it was. So, sorry, man. Cruz ain't a fan. Moving down, next up is James Lontop versus Chris Padilla. Lontop was a prospect. Padilla was an unknown. Padilla used counter wrestling perfectly, expertly, caught Lontop on some lazy kicks, was able to take him down. And when I say counter wrestling, that means when your opponent throws a strike, you shoot. You shoot in response to the attack, and you dodge the attack and catch them on one leg or out of position and put them on their butt. Padilla did a great job at doing this and did not waste any time. It was right, I believe, close to the end of round 1. He gets that final takedown. He cinches up the choke. It's over. Actually, double check. Was that round 1 or round 2?
I think it was round. Was it a round 1? I think it was round 1.
Yeah, I don't remember this one going all that long.
Yeah.
Sorry, long top. But
yeah, it was towards the end of round 1, I think.
Yeah. Before that, we had Petrovic versus Liang. Liang looked good for about 2 minutes. There was lots of scrambling. She was very explosive. But after about 2 minutes, she was completely exhausted. She had nothing left. And that's a bit of a problem.
You kind of need, like, a lot of people who win in the first round a lot, then they come to the UFC, and it's like, well, there's actually 3 rounds. And these fighters are good enough to survive a round in many situations. And This is her fourth loss in the UFC, so we're probably not going to see any more of her, I don't think. But Petrovic looked pretty good.
Yeah, she looked confident once she got... really, she needed to get cracked a few times to wake up. Once she was awake, she didn't have too much trouble grappling Liang. Nice submission win for her. Gabriel Benitez versus Mahashante. This was actually one of the best fights on the card, and it was the opener. Mahashante was a Terminator. He took everything that Gabriel Benitez threw at him and returned. I would say for every 3 punches Benitez threw, Mahashante returned 2 that were harder than the 3. It was great back and forth. Both guys were tagging each other from start to finish. Mahashate got the nod. I figured he had won. Very close. You could have argued for Benitez. I think Benitez might have actually thrown more punches, but from the way I was watching it, Mahashate's were landing a little bit cleaner and a little bit harder. So,
yeah, and as I think some of the commentators were saying as well, and I agreed, but man, Mahashate, he probably could have dodged a couple of those, like there didn't seem to be any effort going in at all to blocking or trying to get out of the way of any of these punches, which, I mean, it worked out for him in the end, but it's like moving forward, I don't know if you could be doing that in every fight, right?
You would be surprised. So the note I wrote on this fight was that Mahashate looks a lot like Marvin Vettori, how he's fighting right now. Now that isn't necessarily a great comparison. Marvin Vettori has had a whole bunch of success having one of the best chins in the UFC. Relying on your chin instead of investing in defense, not ideal. Not a great plan for longevity. But you know what? You got to win.
It worked out for him tonight. So, yeah, you got to hand it to him here for sure. He did kind of seem like he was almost like warming up in round 1 a little bit. He was a little bit slower. And then in round 2, he really came in, I think, and brought the heat. So, yeah, I enjoyed watching him as well. I think he's a pretty good fighter.
Yeah. Funny little bit in the post-fight interview. He mentioned that he thought it would be much easier based on how Gabriel Benitez looked. And turned out it wasn't. Not a great look for Mahashate, but the dude is tough. All right, well, thank you for joining us for another UCF podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you'll join us next time as we talk about UFC 301. Oh, God, they keep doing this. The numbers kept going up.
The number keeps going up.
That's right.
I thought it ended. I thought they were done. Were they like, that was it, 300? That's what I thought.
No, that was just the movie. So... we'll have the flyweight title on the line. It's becoming a more and more prestigious belt. So I hope you'll join us as we review those fights as they come up. And take her easy, folks.